Today, we're going to do a little video of a sort of typical job that we do. It's really not real thick growth like what we'll find in a lot of crawl spaces or attics. But this is a basement we're doing today. There is some light growth. There was no dehumidification down there for quite a while, so just the humidity in the air started absorbing into the structure and allowed some growth to occur. So we were contracted to get it all cleaned up. So I'm going to go ahead and take you on a little tour of us doing a job with liquid remediation chemicals, and we'll show you how we do this. This is the sprayer that we're using. I build these myself. This is the first one I ever built. I've probably had it for about 7-8 years now. It's pretty beat up. I did put some off-roading tires on it because the tires that were on there originally, the plastic wheels, they just kind of disintegrated. But as you can see, there's 2 ports, so 2 people can spray at the same time. I've got 2 100-foot hoses. I'll show you that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and go down into the basement, show you what we're dealing with. So, this house was built back in the 30s, probably 20s. So it's been here a long time. Obviously, there's not a huge moisture issue because the place would have been falling apart by now. But there was enough to where there was some growth going on. Let's see if I can show you. There's some growth right there. It looks like, rub your finger across it, it'll smudge. There's some growth right there. It's smudging. So that's typically means it is microbial growth and not just concrete debris. We do run into that a lot in this area where people will see stuff on the joist. They think it's mold, and really what it is they'll use this wood to use to frame up the basement. Then they'll pour the concrete hardens, and then they'll take the wood off and then build the house out of it. So, but that's not what this stuff is. It's too soft, too smudgeable, and it's definitely growth. So now we didn't take any air samples or anything, but pretty confident that if we did take air samples, we're going to have high concentrations of Aspergillus penicillium type molds. This part of the basement, obviously somebody tried to do some remediation in here at some point. They didn't do a good job because you see growth coming right back through the paint, which is why I don't like to paint. I don't like to seal the wood once we're done remediating because it will trap moisture, and it just looks like you're covering something up. I know, certain standards and protocols say it's okay to encapsulate. Not saying that's the wrong thing to do, but I'm just not a big fan of it because I've run into too many jobs where this is what you get. So let's see, I'll take you through the rest of the house or the basement. So there's not as much growth in this one. Actually, if you look at that, that's pretty thick. But it's kind of isolated. It's not really all over the place. There are a few areas where looks like they had some water leaking. If you look down here, there's some growth for some water intrusion. Looks like they tried to cover it up over on this side. So didn't really see anything underneath the stairs. Well, yeah, maybe there's a little bit right there. Usually under the stairs, you'll find a lot of growth, but it's not too terrible underneath here. Maybe a little bit right there. But we're gonna get all that sprayed. So, and if you come back over here, you can see the front where there's some water damage. Now, I mean, that wood's never going to look brand new, but we can absolutely take care of the mold, and then whatever the new homeowners want to do with it, if they want to cut it out or keep it. I mean, it's not a finished basement. It's not really meant to look pretty. It's just meant to be functional. And as long as they've got a dehumidifier, keeping the relative humidity at 50% or less, they won't have any other problems unless there's a water damage or something like that. So here, they did have a dehu going when we first got here. We turned it off and we put a bag over it because I don't want to get a bunch of liquid on it. And then once we get everything dried out, we'll plug it back in, turn it back on, and let it do its thing. So that's pretty. Okay, it's the next day. So I came to check, see how everything looked. I'm gonna fog the air for the mold spores, but let's see what the wood looks like. Looks pretty good to me. Don't see any more growth. Now I did find a couple spots that my number one guy missed, so we kind of hit those with a, yeah, right there. I hit that with a different solution. So I'll probably have to hit them again, wipe them down. But anyways, overall he did a pretty good job. Looks like he got everything most of the way. The stairs look good. In here it looks really good. Let's go see how this painted room looks. That looks pretty good. I know that looks like growth, but it's not. It's not smudging or anything. Oops, wrong finger. So, but this all looks pretty good. So we did take the drywall down over here because there was quite a bit of growth up above it, but we got it. Come over here. And all that looks really good. I mean, for being a 60, 70-year-old house, that wood looks pretty stinking good. About as new as it's gonna look. So, it took us about an hour. Well, it took my guy an hour to spray this entire basement by himself. And then we set up that indirect fired heater, let it run for a couple of hours. Then my guy came back, unhooked it, was able to come down here without a respirator on. Oh, and you know, there's very little airflow down here. We got a few of these windows that we opened up, but we'll go ahead and close those. But no, I mean, after a couple of hours of cooking, like I said, he was able to come down here without a mask on, you know, smell a slight chlorine odor, but nothing overpowering. He turned the dehumidifier back on, left a couple of fans down here just to kind of blow around. So now I'm going to fog it. Let me close up these windows and then I'll let you see how I do that. Okay, we're back. So, I didn't close all the windows. Actually, I found a couple more spots that my guy missed, and so I had to go wipe it all down and stuff. And it just kind of tells you that I don't care what system of mold remediation you use, you're only as good as the dude doing the work. But that being said, I looked around, I didn't see anywhere else. I just saw a couple of small areas. So I took care of that, and now I'm gonna fog. So what I've got here is a thermal fogger, and we're using a special formula. It's called, it's a spore eliminator. That's right. It's basically a liquid air scrubber or a thermal air scrubber. And what we're going to do is just kind of lightly fog the environment. You don't necessarily have to fog so much that you can't see your hand in front of your face. Mold spores aren't that big. So you do a light fogging in an environment and it's going to take care of those mold spores. As long as you took care of the source. Now I also like to have the HVAC system running while we're fogging so it can distribute it through the air duct. So if there's any spores trapped in the ducts, it'll take care of those. Now if there's source mold growing in the ducts, it won't take care of that. You gotta physically remove it. But other than that, if there's spores that are trapped in the ducts, it'll get them. So, I don't know if you can see all that well, but it's just a light fog. You fog too heavy, you run the risk of leaving a residue. So not so much if the environment's really dry. The more humid the air, the more likely it's going to condense with the moisture in the air and leave a residue. But this DHU is telling us we're about 35% relative humidity. I'm sure that's not very accurate. We're probably 40, 45. But as long as you're below 50, you're good to go. So yeah, you can see it's just kind of distributing everywhere. So any spores that are floating around might be left on the joist or subfloor. As long as it's dry, it's going to attach itself to this liquid air scrubber and it's going to be taken care of. I just wanted to show you this. You guys might think it's cool. I don't know if you can tell, it's getting sucked down into the cold air return. So that's one way to fog an entire house, is just let the HVAC system do it.